Yo, what's up, guys? Back with another Smite Meta update. This one is a bit delayed, but that's more on me than anything else. I was a bit busy and time got away from me. However, we're here now. So, yeah. Let's just get right to it. The Hunter meta, realistically, there's some bigger changes in that Cupid is just far and away the best hunter in the game for ranked. Right? He forces beats, he's a ton of pressure, tons of damage, and he just farms people. Soul laners have a hard time dealing with him because of the cripple field and his ability to get away, but he can be caught out sometimes. But Cupid's really, really strong. You should definitely be using him if you're a hunter player. So, the question is, who do you pick to counter Cupid? Like I said last week, Artemis is a big one. People are picking Artemis to beat Cupid, but they're also picking other things. Charybdis is another thing that does beat Cupid. Or it doesn't beat, but is very, very safe against Cupid. And she can kind of just get away from him. If you want the more fight option, I would go with Artemis, but if you want the safer option, I would go with Charybdis. Other than that, though, a lot of the other hunters are pretty level right now. Heimdall has also been a common answer to Cupid because of his CC immunity and just his ability to actually fight Cupid and win. So I definitely look at those for Cupid, Artemis, Charybdis, and Heimdall. And the rest of the hunters you can kind of pick up interchangeably, except for like Scotty, Neith, Izanami. They're kind of bad, but the rest of them you can pretty much do interchangeably. For supports, DR changes are affecting the supports pretty well. Another powerful support right now, I'm going to say this every week until she gets a significant nerf. Umoja's nuts if you could play her. If you could play her well, I would abuse the shit out of her to try to grind it. She is good damage, incredible CC, the walls are insane, her late game's nuts, good sustain, the rings are nuts, she's crazy. This character is nuts. If you have the mechanical skill with her to play her, I would definitely run her. Same goes for Ares. You can run Ares and run games. If you can play Ares effectively, you can run games. However, a pick that is seeing a bit more prominence is Khepri. Khepri's been good, and I've talked about him before. Khepri's pluck is non-DRable, meaning he can keep people locked down for longer. Khepri Res is a ridiculous ability and a ridiculous thing to use. So, yeah, the ability to revive your dumbass teammate or save the guy who's carrying you is really, really good. Not really much more to say than that. Other than him, though, Cabrakan is still a very, very strong option. Ganesha is another very strong option. He's quite annoying for a lot of soul laners to deal with. And that's really it. You can go with Horus, but he's pretty weak. We're going to move to mids. And with mid laners, someone who saw a rise. If you did not watch the Masters LAN event, I definitely would. It was very, very action-packed. We had an SCC team beat an SPL team, and all the games were really, really close, except for the Bolts Oni Warriors in the quarterfinals, but the rest of them were very, very close, and I would definitely watch them when you have the chance. But somebody who saw a rise in picks, largely I attribute it to Staff of Mirrodin, but Discordia. Discordia looked insane. Her damage is really high, and Discordia passive is really, really good. I will say that once Staff of Mirrodin gets nerfed, if it gets nerfed, she will fall off. But because of how Discordia ult works, her ult goes on cooldown immediately, and Staff of Mirrodin procs off of it, making it do an obscene amount of damage. She also has really short cooldowns, so she's able to just throw out stuff really, really quickly. Another mid laner that was on the rise was Baba Yaga. I would say she's less effective in ranked, but however, she does so much damage, man. This character has an obscene amount of damage, and that just makes her enough to mention. Just because she could just explode people and just shred them down. It's crazy. The Morgan, always going to be strong in ranked because she has the ability to kind of slip into the backline and just explode a carry. If you're good with the Morgan, I would definitely abuse the hell out of her to win your games in mid. She builds a do more build different from what everybody else is building, which is a Warlocks into whatever it may be, Soul Gem, or you're going into Reaver later, all that kind of stuff. She builds like a do more Besk build with do more Karen's coin, all that stuff. And she just explodes people. I would definitely be playing her if you're good with her. Yu Huang is still crazy, man. The Mirrodin stuff with his ult, the same reason Disco's ult does so much damage is why Yu Huang does so much damage. His damage in the early game is really good. His damage in the mid game is pretty decent. In late game, his damage is crazy. He's very, very difficult to dive. And it's... he can get away with a lot in ranked, especially if you're not getting focused down. Chiron. Still a very strong mid. Hunter mids can abuse mage mids because they have higher damage and higher damage abilities early on. Or not higher damage abilities, excuse me. Higher damage just overall early on. And with red buff, their autos do a lot of damage. So they're able to clear quicker and exert pressure elsewhere. Chiron, AMC, and Uller are kind of the prime example of this, but Uller's kind of fallen off after the nerfs a bit. Chiron and AMC are both really, really strong at getting lane pressure and keeping it. One last mage I will mention is Merlin. Merlin feels really good right now. He does an obscene amount of damage, and he's doing very well. He shreds objectives very well. His burst damage is really good, and his versatility is very, very strong. Junglers. I was hoping I didn't have to come back here. I sincerely was. I was really hoping that I would not have to come back here and talk about Osiris for another week. But he's still here. The nerf to his 3 has done a good amount to his prominence. He's not as end-all, be-all, best jungler in the game anymore. Character's still nuts. He's obscene early pressure. His late game is good when you build him a hybrid-y damage build, and you just kill people. It's just, he's good at it. Really good at it. He's really good at getting a lead and then snowballing with it. And that's exactly how you win ranked games, really. I will say Erlang does still do a similar thing in jungle, but not as effectively. We'll move to the assassins now, though, because we gotta talk about the boy. Lancelot. He does a Lancelot of damage. Sorry. He does a lot of damage, and he just kills people. It's that simple. His cripple field's really strong, the horse is really strong, and he just does a shit ton of damage. You can play him in both solo and jungle, and he can just run games. Completely run them, control the entire map, kill the enemy jungler at their camps. If this guy gets ahead, he becomes insufferable. Speaking of getting ahead and becoming insufferable, Nemesis. If Nemesis gets ahead, she just feels like she's unkillable, and she just kills the entire map. This character's still crazy, even with the nerfs to Golden Blade and all the auto-attack items. Ferocious Executioner, Kin Size, Golden Blade, still really, really good on this character. You can even go Erendite. A lot of people have been going Erendite on her recently, which it's strong, because you can chase people down very quickly. They're slowed, you're sped up. It's nuts. In the same vein, Pele. Pele has come back into prominence solely because she was changed, and some of her damage numbers were tweaked and how she does her damage. And she can now get away with doing things that she used to do, which was dashing on somebody, killing them almost immediately, and then just kind of running back, waiting for her cooldowns, and then killing the next person. If Pele gets early kills, she feels impossible to deal with, man. She feels crazy. And she will just heal and just kill you. She heals a ton, even without Soul Eater, although Soul Eater's really, really good on her. She heals a ton. She just does it better. She out-sustains a lot of other junglers right now in the 1v1 and everything. A character that I would be remiss if I didn't mention would be Doji. Doji is probably one of the best, if not the best jungler in the game. Her damage is obscenely high. Her late game is incredible. Her Palo literally forces everybody on the map to get beads, or they're going to die if they don't have a CC immune ultimate. She prevents a lot of picks, and she just does a lot. And if you pair this with a support that gets beads, she can just become a terror on the map. Lastly, I will mention Mercury, because Mercury is a hyper carry and can always get away with this stuff in ranked. I would be careful. If you're good with Mercury and you feel like you can consistently win with him, go for it. It's simple enough. Go build your crit, kill people. That's really it. But if you don't feel like you can't, I would stay away from this pick. Mercury can kind of snowball into the late game, get a bunch of kills, get a bunch of crits, and then just ult through the map, kill people. Alright, solo lane. I said this before, Lancelot. He can become insufferably tanky and very hard to deal with. He does a lot of damage, and he's strong. Okay, we got it. Cool. I'm gonna get out of this tab now. If you watch the Masters LAN, you know that Deathwalker, or if you follow the Smite game, if you follow Smite Pro on Twitter or anything like that, you would know that Deathwalker hit a gigantic 4-man fearless in the Masters LAN. It was absolutely insane. And a lot of people realized, hey, tier's pretty good. And people are running it now. The character has high sustain, really good damage, really good CC. With the movement speed build that he has, with the 2 movement speed items, he gets his relics off very, very often, beads blink, and you're just getting a ton of CC, and you're running around stalling so much time on their carries. You can, in ranked, you can get away with a lot, and you can actually just straight up kill them. 2 or 3 rotations of your abilities will just straight up kill a carry. But that's not your job. Your job is just to annoy the hell out of them, and then let your team finish them off. Set up and annoy the hell out of them. I will talk about Bellona. Because Bellona's really strong, but she kind of gets bopped by tier. And she's fallen off. She's definitely fallen off. Because the builds don't really favor her right now. She likes the kin size and the executioner stuff. You can definitely run that with her, but you are losing out on tankiness. Her builds kind of fell off a bit, so she's weaker than she was before. And unfortunately for you solo laners who don't like the King Arthur Cuchulainn meta, we're back there. King Arthur and Cuchulainn both use the same items very, very well. Builds like this, you go Mail of Renewal instead of Sovereignty if they have a magical solo or jungle. You go Sovereignty, Glad Shield, items, yeah. And King Arthur can just get away with a lot. He does struggle a bit into Cupid. However, that's one exception to a lot of people he just flattens. Cuchulainn manages Arthur early. However, after 2 items, 2 items, Cuchulainn kind of starts losing again. Rage is enough to carry him through the early game, and he holds out against Arthur pretty well. Sun Wukong is an interesting pick because you can kind of just put him into any lane, or any lane matchup, clear the wave, and run away. So Sun Wukong's very safe, and if you get autofill into solo, you could definitely run a Wukong, and he does quite a bit for you. He's very safe, he proxies really well, he farms really well, Soul Leader's really good on him, and you can just... He's pretty easy to use to dive. I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting anybody. Over here, the Guardians have kind of fallen off. There were a lot of Guardians beforehand, but now they've kind of fallen off. Because that full damage build has kind of lost its gimmick. And people know how to play against it now, so they've kind of fallen off. I will mention that Osiris and Achilles are both doing very, very well right now. Achilles more so because of Khepri and that sort of stuff, but he also just does well with Soul Eater. He does well into most lanes. There are some he hard loses, like King Arthur and stuff, but he does pretty well. Osiris, similarly to Bellona, his build has kind of fallen off, but he uses the other items that these guys use better than Bellona does because of the way his kit works and his abilities and stuff like that. One more pick that I will mention is Shiva. Shiva can get away with quite a lot. He does something very similar to King Arthur in that he's just really annoying to deal with in lane. He has a ton of abilities that are up very, very quickly. His ultimate is essentially neutered late game because it doesn't really do much of anything. But your CC is really high and your survivability is really high. He is very, very annoying to deal with and can get a very early lead. Otherwise, though, that's about it. Thanks, guys. Peace.